Okay, there we go.
Okay, I think someone was to share it.
I think so. And then I can just reshare. There we go.
Thank you very much for joining us for the second session after lunch. Thank you for those that commented. This second session is starting with a very, very revolutionary tool. Now, most people complain about generative AI. Most people scream about ChatGPT, but literally, and say, oh, students don't do any more work. They just go copy and paste from ChatGPT and then submit it. But the next we are going to hear now literally turns that on its head. How do you use generative AI and other tools as a teacher on the other side of the fence? Instead of blaming the students for using advanced technologies, we are now taking the advanced technologies and tools and deploying it in ways that is almost magical. Marking is the most tedious work anybody involved in learning, teaching ever does. Now, you don't need to wish it away. We are going to take it away from you. So I'm going to invite to the microphone Professor Chris, who works with Professor Liu and the Vice Chancellor of the University of Surrey, and they put their heads together to say, not only do we need to use AI for good, but we can use AI to transform the teaching of research. We can use AI to turn the class on its head and produce superior researchers out of our students, giving feedback that no human being ever gives routinely. And I've seen it live. I'm not just saying it because I want to introduce him. I'm saying it because I've tasted it and I have seen the fruits of the power of generative AI used on the other side for the good of the students, for the good of learning, and for the good of universities, colleges, and anyone that marks essay. Over to you, Chris. Thank you very much for making the way, braving the storm, and coming down. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
And yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I've now got to follow that introduction, which is going to be tough, but I will try. So thank you very much to the organising committee of this conference for enabling us to come and have a presentation. And what I'll do is briefly introduce myself and then run through some of the story of Keith.ai, and we'll look a bit at what it can do. I'm going to give you a sneak peek of the tool itself. So my name is Dr. Chris Trace, originally not doing what I'm doing now. So I am the head of digital learning at the University of Surrey. And what that means is I lead a team of digital experts across the university to work with academics and with students to ensure that we're using our digital educational ecosystem as well as we can. So areas of specialism for myself, technology enhanced learning, unsurprisingly, increasingly digital assessment and digitized assessment, and veterinary medicine. So my doctorate actually is a veterinary medical one. I'm originally a veterinary surgeon. So I've been working with Keith.ai for the last year or so, year and a half, working with them to ensure that the tool is as brilliant as it can be. Okay. And I'm going to tell you a bit about that story. So why was Keith.ai set up and what are some of the challenges that we're facing? So it's really a global challenge for education. There's a number of different areas where there are opportunities being missed, and it's making it harder and harder for us to make headway. So around the world, there's quite a lot of expenditure waste. We've also got challenges around data not being utilized as well as it could. We capture a lot of information that just slips through our fingers. There are challenges in terms of policy implementation. So getting some of these this great data and bringing it to bear. And then we also definitely have overburdened teachers. This is not just in this country. This is a global challenge. It's often a profession that isn't as prestigious as some, so it lacks sometimes in terms of recruitment and retention. But this all builds together towards creating a real challenge for us that you can't see. So I'm going to move this out of the way, otherwise you can't see the key part of my slide. Let's move this over here, perhaps. Okay. Next slide. So when we look at some of these challenges worldwide and what that leads to, some of the numbers, there you go, slight lag on there. So around, for the average teacher, so pre-university, K-12 teaching, we estimate there's around 600 hours spent annually doing the marking of students' work, okay? And there's a variety of sources that back up this figure. If you look then at university level education, for the average university, we're looking at almost 250,000 hours annually being spent by academics across the institution marking students' work. I know as an academic that a lot of students then often would not read the feedback I was giving. And some of the real challenges that we have around marking is not only it takes a long time, but it can also suffer any challenges as anything we interact with as humans can. There can be bias, there can be a lack of accuracy in what we're trying to do. And we think students deserve more. We also think staff deserve more. Okay, so across the UK, there are further statistics that really kind of back up some of these challenges. I'm just going to try and get rid of this altogether, perhaps. Let's hide that down there. There you go. So 17% of teachers are spending more than 11 hours a week on grading and assessments. And for the average UK teacher, so some of my family are teachers, my mother-in-law is a teacher. Sorry, not my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law is a teacher. And UK teachers are working almost 60 hours a week, with around only about 19 hours of that being spent in face-to-face teaching with a huge section of work and administration that is not that student-facing high-value activity. Okay. All right, so around the world, we've got other challenges coming through too. So what I would love to do, I know some of you in the room have seen the slides, so you perhaps know some of the answers, but a few different flags for you. So anybody recognize this flag? Say online, feel free to play along. Shout out the answer if you know the answer.
Japan.
Japan, yeah, good. So in Japan, unpaid overtime is a real challenge. So this is also some of the stats you'd see through the UK. But there's an average of 56 hours per week, with a lot of that time being spent on unpaid activities and working outside of the normal paid hours. Okay, how about this country? Waiting for it to appear on the screen. I can see it on my screen. There you go.
Yeah, Brazil.
Brazil, good. Okay. So in terms of educational spending in Brazil, sources would point towards some of the corruption challenges. So there's a lot of spending, almost 6% of GDP for Brazil is spent, but their students consistently rank around some of the lowest ratings. So there's a mismatch between spending and what's actually being delivered all the way through. So the next flag coming through when it gets there on the screen is South Africa. This is a painful delay. Okay, so educational inequality. So South Africa really suffers from some of the challenges with gaps in attainment for students from different backgrounds, different urban and rural areas. There's huge disparities. And the final flag, I'm going to fast forward because otherwise I'll waste my valuable time here, is Nigeria. So in Nigeria, there's a chronic shortage in terms of funding. So there's less than 1% of gross domestic product spent on higher education. And that can really lead to challenges in terms of funding universities and others. Okay. So around the world, we have educational challenges. We've got opportunities as well. Education is a weapon. Education is one of the greatest things we can do to change the world. I think Nelson Mandela quoted very similar. If we're going to quote anybody, let's start there. So one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, number 4, is around quality education. So this is something we really should be taking seriously if we want to make a difference. And we firmly believe at Keith.ai and actually at the University of Surrey, many education leaders think the future for education is more personalized. It's self-guided, it's enabling students to work at the pace of their ability, not at the pace of the cohort or at the slowest pace in the room, essentially. We're living in an age where technology is being able to unleash that kind of potential for us. So it's an exciting time to be alive. And we think we've got some of the answers to how that could be done. So we think there's going to be personalized learning experiences where we can also pace the flexibly pace content and course delivery. There'll be a shift away from trying to teach everybody the same thing at the same time, because we'll be enabled in ways to be able to do that. And the engagement therefore improve, because students will be able to go as fast or as slow as they need to through that content. I'm going to give you a
Upload
demo.
an assignment and simply.
And the audio seems to have dropped off, unfortunately. I'll give you a quick sneak peek of what Keith can do. And I'm hoping the audio will come through on the version there. Otherwise, I'll narrate the video as we go along. But essentially, I'm going to give you a view of Keith in action. And what Keith does with this is it's an artificial intelligence model that you can upload content into, and it's able to rapidly mark that content and provide feedback based on how it's been trialed. So I'll put the video on and I'll try and talk through as it goes. It moves along at a pace. So here you can see our portal and Keith,
Upload an
where the
assignment
work
and
is being
simply
uploaded.
Keith it to
all you
receive
have to
high
do
quality
is
feedback
click Keith.
instantaneously.
And what that will do
Keith
really
is built for
rapidly
educators.
is
They
work
can
through
mark work like
the different
normal
sections
without
of
having
work,
to interact
start
with or
providing
prompt an AI model
loads of feedback
whatsoever.
as you go.
Edit results and feedback
the
easily.
instructor
The
is
more
then
you
able to go
do,
back
the more
to
synthesized the
feedback,
AI
tailor,
becomes with you,
change
resulting in
this. They can
something we
change the
like to call
marks, they can change
a
the
digital
feedback
marking
that's
twin.
provided,
Create
all the way
assignments for
through.
your students in the hub
So
section
it's
and mark them
completely involving the
simultaneously.
academic as a
In the
human
file
in the
portal,
loop. We're not
reach
trying to
accuracies
take
of
them out and replace them.
95%
We're trying
by
to
giving the
augment.
AI student
Creating a
responsible
digital
for that
marking
assignment.
twin. Okay,
That's
so
Keith,
that's
giving you your
going to then
time
show
back.
you in the hub here. You can upload different samples.
Upload an
you're
assignment
able
and simply
to,
Keith it to
in a
receive
fraction
high
of the
quality
time,
feedback
produce some
instantaneously.
really great
Keith
marks
is built for
that you know are going to be more
educators.
consistent
They can
and
mark
much
work
more
like normal
personalised.
without having to interact with or.
So we've got a bit of a loop. So to summarize this in a table, we think of this a little bit like it's the supercar versus the horse. There's traditional things. Horses are great. I love a horse. It's not the pinnacle of transport like it used to be. And we feel like that's perhaps how assessment will be viewed in this sense. So a human marker, if we were looking at something like a 3,000 word essay, it may you're going to give, what feedback you're going to give. A human with Keith could do that in a fraction of the time. So perhaps 5 minutes for Keith to run through it and then provide suggested marks and feedback against each section that then the human marker is able to check against that work. Okay. There's a real difference then in how the academic or the teacher can spend their time. They can dedicate much more time that they've freed up towards personalized teaching, and to really start to narrow in on consistencies between markers. So we know for many years that if you give the same paper to 2 different markers, they'll give 2 different marks. Whereas with Keith, what you can do is start to get towards that optimum mark and have that much greater consistency. So some of the savings that could be made. So in terms of individual teachers, there's some of the trials we've seen and some of the results coming through, up to an 80% reduction in terms of marking time, which gives you a vast chunk of time per teacher to be given back. So around 480 hours, perhaps, for the average teacher, could be almost 200,000 hours saved for a university that can be turned into research, into greater personalized teaching, trying to push forward some of the educational things we're trying to do. A lot of the challenges we have currently in terms of education is that teachers, academics, lecturers don't have the time they need in order to make the improvements that we'd love to see. So this is one way to create some of that time. So Keith has had some really magnificent milestones along the way. So it was launched last year in December in the House of Lords. Very fortunate to have a few of the Lords join us. We've been shortlisted in a number of different educational awards, and really it's brilliant to see people sitting up and paying attention to this. Being trialed currently in around countries all around the world. So loads of great progress. One of the things, the stories that I guess sticks with me, and one of the metaphors and analogies that I feel is the electronic calculator is used a lot as a way of perhaps thinking about generative AI and its capabilities and capacities. So previously, before the electronic calculator, maths exams would be, okay, add this and this, or divide this and this. Once the electronic calculator came around, you could suddenly push the boundaries of what was expected in terms of what somebody could do. And so you'd ask them harder questions, you'd push that further out. With generative AI, we feel like this is this kind of times equivalent. We can vastly expect more from our students. We can push those capabilities forward. And this is actually a way we can harness it on our side. So it's not just something the students are using. Okay. Really, really happy to take questions, really happy to follow up. Some of the easiest ways for people to follow up on some of this is to visit the website. So it's keith.ai. We have a QR code which you can scan to book in time. And really, really happy to follow up on any questions and conversations that spill from this. Because yeah, we think it's a brilliant opportunity to empower our academics, our teachers. I think of it as giving them a superhero cape, to be honest, and giving them superpowers. Thank you very much. Look forward to speaking with you all. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much.
No worries, good time.
So we got some questions online.
Perfect.
But they're asking, do you require any specialist hardware to run Keith?
Yeah, so we don't at all. So Keith itself can be run on a, look, work out which camera, this one or this one?
This one.
Perfect. Okay, so Keith can work completely on its own website. So there's ways that you can use the Keith hub in order to upload your students' work and marks, because there's a training process that happens first, where we look at previous assignments, previous submissions. We then use those, the marks and the feedback and the scores you'd given before in order to create a mini model that's bespoke for your particular assignment. And all of that could be happening on the Keith website. So you don't need to download anything, you don't need to do anything, you can use it all through there.
And another one, I think almost everybody's asking this, is this subject specific subjects that will not go well with Keith, or are there others that are extremely great with Keith?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things I say whenever I talk about generative AI is there's a lot of areas where people think it can't do certain things. And I'll always say ... yet, because generative AI is constantly evolving. Keith is very similar. It is constantly evolving. So currently, where it works best is by so written language assignments. They could be projects, they could be essays, they could be case reports, lab reports. It can interpret images, it can interpret some code. What it can't do currently yet, he says, is grade a student on their interpretive dance, for example. But give us time. So, you know, the pace of AI and the way that it's evolving, I do think will grow into a lot of different subjects.
Okay, how much training does the average teacher that uses PowerPoint slides and is conversant with Word required to have before they can be proficient in handing all their essays over to Keith?
Yeah, perfect question. So this is one of the things I really like about Keith, is that it's taken out that steep learning curve you might need to do. So if you, for example, tried to go and do this straight via ChatGPT, which I would actively discourage, all sorts of problems with student privacy and data and things like that, you would also then need to understand a lot about the prompts and things you need to do. Keith takes all that hard work out of it for you. So what you just need to be able to do really is, if you can submit the documents for training, much as you would for any other kind of submission, an electronic submission. So you need some basic IT skills in order to do it. But Keith itself is then able to do the hard work for you. So it will present that work to you. And a lot of, in my university, we mark students' work in our virtual learning environment, for example. It's a very similar interface. So you'll see the students' work, you'll see the rubric appearing on the side. The best bit then is that, oh, hang on, Keith has already started to populate the rubric and suggest the marks for you. So it's a very similar workflow for most academics.
Then Turnitin. If you're already familiar with Turnitin, how are there any overlap between Turnitin and Keith? And then number two, will Keith be able to identify copy? Okay, that's plagiarism. Okay,
Okay.
can Keith mark as well as detect plagiarized work?
Yeah. So good question. And it's one that I've had before. So Keith is not intended to be a plagiarism detector. It's not been designed to be an AI detector. There are other tools out there that do that. He says again with ... yet. So it may be something that we build into that. But the way that we see this at the moment is there are tools that already do that, that have built up a huge bank of existing data to draw on. So yeah, we're not aiming to do that currently.
Okay, okay. So we can use that as almost like what do you call it now? A browser tie-in or a LinkedIn. So they will use the traditional Turnitin, and then from there moving on to Keith.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so we are looking at different so virtual learning environments out there that use some of them that you can integrate in terms of integrate with Turnitin and other plagiarism detectors. That's the most used one. And we're looking at a variety of different integrations. So there are some already that are fairly advanced and some that are in the pipeline too.
Okay, Zambia. If they were going to deploy it starting from next year, what are the preparatory things they need to do this year, and what are the cost implications?
Yeah.
For a college-based institution.
Yeah, cool. So what we find most universities or colleges or schools want to do, or even companies or governments, they often will want to do a series of trials to build up towards a full deployment. So what we're doing with many different people at the moment is we're doing initial trials of the tool, which is largely based on historic data. And it gets you used to inputting the data, seeing how accurately it would mark your previous data, where you'd combine perhaps some of your data is used for training, and then you test out how accurate that is on the other data. Okay, that'll give you a really good starting point. People then often move towards a pilot phase or a partial deployment of the tool, where they select a number of different ones. So the trial itself is free of charge. The pilot is then heavily discounted, so you can test it out on a number of different areas and subjects to see what works. And then as you scale up towards full deployment, then the costs come in. The costs have been designed carefully, so you essentially are saving yourself money overall. So the money that you would be paying or you're able to recoup is a really great rate.
Wow. And that's interesting. So throughout the pilot program, there are no cost to the institution.
So in the trial phase, that's that first small part on historic data, there's no charge. In the pilot phase, which is often the second part where people start testing out for real, there are some costs there, but heavily discounted. Okay. And that's because there's a lot of compute and things going on behind the scenes in order to run these as we start to scale up. So some costs come in there, but again, designed to make it competitive, because we know it can be challenging sometimes to allocate funds for some of these things.
Okay, somebody's asking about diagnostic. Can it be used as a tool to identify the strengths and weaknesses of students, especially when you're looking at a large class or large cohort, like the African universities have notoriously large students?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's exactly what it's for. So on every single individual student, it will be working out the strengths, it'll be working out the weaknesses, it will be providing tailored feedback and feed forward to tell them how they can improve. So you as the administrator are able to see all of that. One of the things that Keith are building at the moment is then a dashboard functionality to enable you to see that in an easier way. So you can see, okay, who are your higher performers, perhaps even grouping people together and say, okay, this group have these kind of educational challenges, this group have a different set of needs. So yeah, some of that is here now, which is the personalized tailored feedback for every student. And that dashboard grouping is coming soon.
Wow. Thank you. I'm just trying to look now. It is essay based and not necessarily mathematical.
So it works fantastically well for essay based, and some of the mathematical stuff we're still testing out. Some of the things I've seen look very promising. I think we're most confident around written language currently. So not necessarily just essay based, but certainly, essays, projects, case studies, lab reports, things like that. They can do really well.
And thesis.
Yes.
The
Oh, absolutely.
so-called
100,000 word
Yeah.
PhD thesis. That's the kind of thing you want to put in here because it would save you hours, days of your life, Mark.
Thank you very much. Sorry, because someone is asking for a workshop. Are there opportunities for you or any of your colleagues to run a workshop for institutions that want to prospect? Not prospect, they're no longer prospecting. They already made the initial decision to want to have this tool. Do you have a workshop? Do you have training? And how long does the training take?
Absolutely, yes. So all of that completely available. We're scaling up as a company in terms of the numbers and what we can do. So we're very happy to do online training. Even we've gone out to some countries, some institutions to deliver workshops to work through that process. So if you get in touch directly with the Keith team, we can absolutely explore all options required.
Okay. So thank you very much. We'll push you. You braved the storm, and now you've taken education by storm. I don't think there's anybody that has ever marked work that would not be grateful for such a tool.
Absolutely, that's the reaction. So I used to mark a lot of work, and I would sit there on planes with my paper that I was trying to mark all the way through. So this is one of the things I've really seen the opportunity for us to transform the staff experience, not just the student experience. Staff really need help, and I think this can really help them deliver even more for our students. Okay, so yeah, I hope great opportunity for all.
If we have any questions in the room, I think we can do that over coffee. You got tea, coffee, and you got orange juice. We got some sandwiches here. And those of you online, I will give you virtual love.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So mute this.
You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use a proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai. the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn it into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessments and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt to think. Your AI model completely understands your assessments and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt to think. Your AI model completely understands your assessments and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt to think. Your AI model completely understands your assessments and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little, unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use our proprietary propagation system to turn that into a database of thousands of responses. The more data, the more you can be sure your Keith.ai model is marking with precision. This isn't just ChatGPT. You, the educator, don't have to interact with or prompt a thing. Your AI model completely understands your assessment and how you mark it, reaching a 95% plus accuracy when compared to human markers. The AI grades against your rubrics, determining a final grade with a repository of justifications. This can be sent straight to the student as feedback. If you, the educator, are not happy, simply come in and change or add to the score and comments. Every time you do, your AI model learns and synthesizes more to you and your style. That's how Keith is saving educators 80% of their time marking. That's how Keith is redefining assessment. Keith.ai, the key evaluation and assessment tools hub, putting the A and the I in education. Traditional assessment formats are burdened by time, repetitiveness, and inconsistency. After waiting 3 weeks, the student receives little unpersonalized feedback, influenced by unseen biases. We offer you something to change all that. You train your own Keith.ai model to your assessments. All we need is 10 to 50 assessment responses, and we can use defining assessment.
Oh, Charles, thank you for joining us. Professor Charles,
Hello, Chris. Can you hear
how
me?
are you?
Doing
Yeah,
well,
I can hear
thank
you
you.
loud and clear. What's happening to your video?
Let me push this on. There we go.
Okay. If you send your slides across to us, we can, or you project from your slide, we'll give you, well, that's
I
it.
can project
For
from
Cambridge.
here.
The journals for Cambridge. Okay. Can you see us now?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
a
we're just coming
moment.
back from break. We're coming back from a tea break.
Great, great.
Okay.
Shame I can't join you in person.
Oh. Okay.
Shall I go ahead?
No, I'll need to introduce
Okay.
you formally.
Right.
You can't come. I have to introduce you first. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. So yeah, okay. So make sure you don't miss your train. And Chris, I'll send some things across to you, including the links. Okay. Yes, definitely. Even before then. So because on the 27th of January, I want to leave a deposit for this. So meet again. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Very good. The Wi-Fi very good. Very strong. They saw it in Africa, they saw it in the US. Everybody saw this. So, okay. Okay. Okay, I'll call you. I'll stop by your place. Okay, thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we need to take our seats now, and we're joining Cambridge. We're joining Cambridge. Professor Charles is going to look at assessments, numerical assessment, not just essay assessment, numerical assessment. And it's the volume up there. And the Instagram is on.
No, it's not. I'll
Okay,
go to
okay,
it.
good. So we're all platforms. No, he's going to project. So can you make him a co-host? Professor Charles is going to be a co-host now, so that he can share his. I think you can only do co-host from there. Yeah, it's going to be a co-host now, and then he can share his slides and in-depth knowledge on how we can mark less as a teacher and get the computer to do most of the work for us. We've just heard how we can do our essays with AI, and now we are going to do the mathematics with AI. Okay. Peter, have I got volume here?
Yes, you should.
I think it's muted. No, here, I want to use the volume. Thank you so much. Gift.
Okay, can share.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you can share now. We can see your share.
Okay. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
You're coming through okay from my end.
Okay. If I'm coming through okay for you, then all the other people can hear and the projection can hear as well.
Good.
In
Let me know when
education, a lot of us complain against technology. There's this bitter truth that today some teachers are very unhappy with technology because they think that generative AI is going to make the students lazy. And therefore, we cannot use AI or use technology except the students are using it. With Somatic, the team at Somatic has tried and demonstrated beyond all doubts that technology today is the biggest tool that can achieve excellent teaching in science, excellent teaching of mathematics, excellent teaching in numerical subjects. So if you are listening to this on Instagram, please go on your comment section and hashtag Somatic. If you're on Facebook, go to the comment section and just type hashtag Somatic. Those of you on Zoom, to confirm that you are still with us, please type hashtag Somatic. And we want to see how Somatic can trend on X, or what used to be Twitter, how it can trend on Facebook, while we listen to Charles, Professor Charles, live from Cambridge, download for us the easiest and the most effective way to teach science in our time. Over to you, Charles.
Thank you very much. And you're quite right, Chris, about the fears of bad AI apps. I was just set up a new phone, Android, went to the Play Store to get some apps. And the second most popular education app is Gauth, AI Study Companion, and it's completely a cheating app. It's an app which allows students to do problems without thinking, just by getting an AI to solve them for them. So there are definitely a lot of apps that hurt education out there, but our app is definitely designed to help, and we do have good evidence about student learning through the app. So definitely good and bad apps out there. We are an app that's focused on quantitative learning in STEM subjects, mathematics, statistics, sciences, economics, business, anything that involves quantitative studies. And there are more and more students that are studying these quantitative subjects. Over 50% of university entries are now in some STEM subject. And that means students are having to do quantitative courses, which many find difficult. They're often the harder courses. And so universities think, how can we get our big cohorts through these courses? How can we bridge the gap from school to university? And they've been using education technologies to try to help students, give them resources, also to try to assess work fast for larger cohorts, so they'd have to do, so they can have manageable workloads, and they will give students faster feedback to improve their learning. So these are the potential benefits of online solutions to learning and to assignments. The trouble is that usually when they do that, the quality of the assignments is dumbed down. We have a lot of questions, nice questions that are written on paper where students have to think, do the work, write down answers, free form, that are converted into multiple choice questions where students are largely thinking, well, there are 4 options, which option feels the most likely, and just trying to guess make an educated guess. So that it's unfortunate that the quality of questions is often declines when you go online, and the experience of learning can be less active in general, with in-person tuition, lectures. If you see that online, it can be a more passive form where you just sit back and listen rather than asking questions and actively engage with a person. So our aim is to avoid that and to bring STEM learning online, but to keep it engaging and to keep it active and to preserve the quality of traditional forms of learning, but in an online format with the online benefits too. And we built up a platform with 2 pillars. One of them is questions, the ability to ask authentic questions that are engaging, but also are similar to what people have to do on paper, which match the quality of paper questions, and which also give students a path to progress. So they're not just multiple choice, they're generally quantitative answers, numeric, but also formulas, equations, matrices, steps of working, manipulation of graphs, all sorts of questions. We try to have as many types of questions available so that students get a more authentic question, and we can take what they would have done on paper and give them a similar experience in an upgraded format. So you can see here, they're playing with the graph to see what they're trying to find the volume of a sphere. They're entering steps, and each step could be a formula, could be an equation, and the system is evaluating whether these steps are right or wrong. And that we need to build up, various aspects to allow students to do this easily. So they're entering with a simple formula panel, but also to have it reliably assessed, because students don't want AI to be assessing their work in a way that they can't trust. They want to be able to trust it. So we want to have a reliability rate of that's very high. What we're getting is over 99.9% reliability. In theory, 100% reliability. So that's also one of the risks of AI, that it may not give you very reliable forms of assessment that we are trying to ensure doesn't happen with the use of symbolic algebra engines to assess students' work. So here is example of students giving in a wrong answer, then giving in an answer that's along the right lines, and eventually getting it correct. So this is saying you're fine so far. You need to do another step to simplify your answer. So that's the assignments aspect. I'll show some examples of how we're applying this shortly. We also have an aspect which is interactive learning materials. And the idea here is there are great textbooks out there, but they're not necessarily the most engaging format to learn from. They're just flat pieces of paper that many people don't find too inspirational. They also can be a little bit difficult to learn. And in STEM subjects, you have lots of graphical content, lots of graphs to understand that can be difficult, can be kind of many elements that are hard to figure out how they fit together. So our idea is we can have these graphs, but you can interact with them. You can take this planet that's moving around the sun that you can see in this picture, and gradually build up, see how is it moving, see what is its direction and velocity, and plot at one arrow, then plot the acceleration of how that's changing, and gradually build up to show that it's actually accelerating towards the sun, which is Newton's idea of gravity, which is a difficult concept to understand, especially if you're looking at a textbook and everything is just there all at once. And then it's hard to figure out how things fit together. So it's an example of something that very few students would be able to understand from a textbook page, But if you build it up step by step and make it interactive and make it move, it's a lot easier to understand. Not necessarily very easy, but a lot easier. And so we've got this idea that we're building into the next generation of textbook, interactive textbook, which is going to have all the good features of textbooks, all the things you expect, but has these interactive elements too that make things, harder concepts easier to understand. Oh, something wrong with my, apologies for this, but sorry about the question marks. The idea is that we have quantitative assessments that has step-by-step feedback, but can also fit into existing systems like learning management systems. So I think all of these green ones are supposed to be ticks. Apologies for the display of the PowerPoint. We are a startup, and we're working. We've developed some, some approaches to assessment, some technology around assessment and learning that is, unique out there. That other things are just relying on multiple choice questions, much more basic forms of questions, and learning materials. We developed this, and we're starting to work with some prominent institutions around the world on various projects. Always interested in setting up projects. So if you are working on anything interesting that could benefit from quantitative resources, interactive resources, good questions for students to do online, preparation for students, anything on these areas, happy to discuss how to work with you. Let me see some of these projects that are quite interesting. Some of them I'll go into a bit of detail on how we've been able to support some very interesting aspects of quantitative learning in various areas. We have various sorts of preparation for students, including at Cambridge, Judge Business School, for various programs, getting students up to speed. For a course, they may have studied maths and stats quite a long time ago, maybe haven't done much of finance, accounting. We can get them up to speed with an online course. I'll show you some of the results of that in a moment, in terms of student engagement and progress. Another interesting project is one that we're running with National University of Singapore at the moment, which is for statistics and econometrics assignments. This is a big area of growth in need for data, need for analytics at all sorts of levels, right from elementary levels for business analytics, simple graphing, up to more advanced levels where it's used in data science and AI. So the interesting aspects of this platform, which I'll show you shortly as well, is the generation of data for students to analyze, so that students aren't just doing something that's theoretical, but also practical. They're getting data, analyzing it in Stata, R, Python, whatever they want to use, and then coming back to the system, filling in answers, and we can generate unlimited amounts of data of all sorts of formats, which gives them as much practice as they need to be able to master the methods. Another interesting project we're working on is with Formula One. It's for a design and technology project, so just shows the variety of things that you need quantitative learning resources for. One example of an interesting area there is computer-aided design, where we can generate 3D shapes for students to implement, and they can prove that they implemented them in their CAD, computer-aided design package, by filling in some answers about the volume or some other quantity you can measure there. So giving them experiences that are very authentic, that involve data or computer-aided design, etc., whatever they need to know for the course, but also giving it in a way where they actually get assessed on have you been able to do this, and encouraged to learn the methods. Let me go into a bit of depth on engagement, reliability, progress. So we have quite a bit of work on preparing students for various courses. And this was a course that we ran with economics at Bristol for large numbers of students, getting them ready for the start of their year. A lot of engagement from students. They were doing over 100 attempts at questions per student for this large cohort. Very big challenge at universities, actually, keeping students engaged. I go around visiting universities, and some universities have such big problems getting students to do anything. They feel that students just pay money and they expect to get a degree without doing anything. Now, some universities have more challenges than others, but getting students more engaged is important. And there are a lot of students that want to learn, and just getting be encouraged by having a nice, engaging system where you have some incentives and motivation to get things right and to master concepts. Marking reliability is something where there's a risk that AI is not always a reliable system. It can most of the time give good output, and most of the time can give you something quite interesting and can be impressive for that reason. But for assessment of student work, especially if it's high stakes, you want it to be not just most of the time, you want it to be almost all the time, so that students would very, very rarely have any sort of error. So we basically had no errors in the system. We were able to confirm that it was definitely above 99.9% in terms of a confidence interval. But basically, this means elimination of any errors, completely reliable marking system. You can't do this for everything. You can't do this for student essays, but you certainly can do this for mathematical stuff, not just numbers, but also equations, formulas, and the interesting stuff like that. When we got big projects internationally, we often find quite challenging situations, perhaps with many students. So we were running a project in India where we had to be able to deploy this for 60,000 students, often in challenging conditions of limited internet. So definitely a good piece of technical work for us to make sure that our system can run on phones well, on offline devices well, just needing sporadic internet to connect. So that was an interesting deployment challenge that we was successfully showed our ability of our platform to deploy to many students simultaneously. One of the most interesting things that I want to show about our work so far has been student progress. So not just engagement, but also progress. And this is with projects we're running now at Judge Business School, where we're getting enormous engagement per student. So this is actually close to 400 attempts at questions per student. Probably doing 20 to 40 would be considered good, but this is certainly more than 10 times what would be considered a good level of engagement. And secondly, student progress. So we've got this diagram here, which I like to show. It's a Sankey diagram, so it shows the number of people that go on from one sort of thing to something else. And I'll show you how this one works. If we start on the left, hopefully you can see the pointer there. If we start on the left, we see that students are initially attempting a question. And most of them are in this red area where they're not getting this question completely correct. So let's just call that getting it wrong. And that's this red area, and this green length, which is 455 students, a small number of students getting it right first time. Now, the ones that get it right first time, they don't feel a need to go on because they are fine. So most of them just stop at that point, which is fine. The ones that get it wrong first time, they almost all feel that they want to improve. And the system encourages them to do that, to try another variant of the problem. Could be different formulas, different way that data is generated, a similar problem, but with something different about it. And hopefully they'll be able to learn how to do it the second time. And that's what we see in the data. So they can go away, think about it, see some work solutions, and then try again afresh on a new question. And most of them are able, almost all of them do a reattempt. We can see that this almost all this bar is students that are reattempting, which is this portion and this portion put together. And most of them are able to figure it out how to do it for the second time. So that's this green upwards arrow. Some of them still get it wrong the first time and the second time, and that's this group. But even those, they almost all reattempt, and most of those are able to figure out how to do it for the third attempt. So by the time they've tried 3 or 4 attempts, we've gone from only about 30% being able to do it correctly to about 95% being able to do it correctly. So that's a very big learning path, which students can do all by themselves and doesn't need intervention of an academic. And then that means that academics can target their work so that you can focus on the students that are having trouble. You can start, you can spend more time on bigger ideas because students are already able, when they come to your class, they're already able to do the problem. They've done it at least once, which is a good step, minimal condition for any system to be able to get to a student to the point where they've practiced and to be able to done this correctly at least once. So feel free to talk to me if you have any ideas for projects, if you have students that you're working with or courses you're running and are thinking about moving things online and I want to do this in a way that's high quality, that's still authentic, but also allows for student progress, a high level of student progress and engagement. Let me show you a few examples. How are we doing for time, Chris? Chris, you may be muted. Do I have a few minutes to show a few examples? Well, I'll start anyway. I didn't get an answer, but feel free to cut me off when the time is looking short. So let's give a few examples of the sorts of things that the system would allow. So first of all, it's got wait, let me try this one. So here, for example, it's showing I've tried to do some question. Okay, let me try with this one. Try to do this question. You've got to find the derivative of this thing. It's an important skill for students to have, calculating derivatives. I go to some system. I don't need to learn a programming language. I can just type it in a natural way, maybe use a formula panel that looks similar to Microsoft Word or other systems, and type in various stuff. I'm just going to type in some random stuff because I don't want to actually do the question, but whatever I type, the system will understand, is this the right answer? Is it wrong? If it's right, is it right but still needs simplifying, etc. These sorts of things. Let's say this is definitely the wrong one. Let's say I can't work out how to do this question. Maybe I give up. I can see, okay, here's the chain rule. This is how you apply the chain rule. And okay, I could try to figure out how this sort of thing is done. And then I can try with some similar problem, but it doesn't. This is also a chain rule type of question. And I can try again using a different problem with similar techniques. And through this process, students are often, almost always able to learn and figure out how to do this in our data with a well-designed course. Engagement. Part of engagement is having questions that are engaging and in resources that are engaging. But for questions, we like to have a good variety. So if here's an example of a couple of graphical questions. One moment. Let's try this one. So here students are looking at bivariate data. So with two-dimensional data sets, randomly generated data, and they need to figure out what is this meaning of a best fit line. So it's actually trying to minimize a sum of squares, and this actually visualizes the square. So we're trying to minimize this area. And so it's a fun question that gets students an understanding of what is this minimum sum of squares. Gets students a feel for this, and then once they do that, they can start to go to write the equation of the line, and then they start to get into a sequence of statistics and regressions. And one more, we have quite a few questions that involve data, and so here. This is a simple data generation, again, using bivariate data for an introduction to regressions. But if you click on Open Dataset, you will have the data available for you to analyze. And if you can try to analyze it, go to whatever software package you're learning in your course, put in some answers. If you get them wrong, you can always try again with newly generated data. So that's the advantage of this randomization and generated data, which we have found is very effective for learning, also very popular with students, because students don't like to see they submit some answer, they got it wrong, they got a bad mark, and that's it. They always like to have the ability to improve and improve their score as well. So they're very keen on improving their score, and that involves actually figuring out how to do the problem. So that's the learning path we like to give. And these things can get quite interesting. So for example, here, some work we're doing with the LSE on economics. Students are having to, I'm not going to tell you the actual economics of this, but here we're plotting a couple of curves, and the students need to figure out some reasonable position of these two curves to match this economic situation. And we can evaluate whether these curves have the right sort of properties, which in this case is one is above another, they're tangent at a certain point, etc. So we try to have a lot of variety, equations, formulas, matrices, curve sketching, all this stuff. It's one of the things that does keep students engaged with the system to have different perspectives as they are solving problems. So that's an overview of what we're doing, and we have a variety of projects: math, stats, economics, engineering, and always interested in working with new things. So I think that's what I have to say. So let's feel free to ask any questions. I believe, Chris, do you want to take it from here?
I'm mute now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. You got some online participants. Peter, I think you might have to shut that down. Okay. How many?
How
many weeks or months does it take the average teacher of economics to familiarize themselves with this tool?
I wouldn't put it in weeks or months, Chris. I think we usually have a session which is half an hour to make sure that we have the information to match up our resources to a particular course. We try not to change things too much. So usually lecturers are not changing the course structure. Sometimes they even give us their problems, so they don't even need to change the questions. The familiarization with the application is pretty quick, maybe 15 minutes, to show how to assign things on the platform, how to view student work, how to look at the analytics and see what questions the students having more trouble with, things like that. It's a quick process. Definitely, it's good to have some continuous engagement as people work with us to suggest features or to suggest new questions. But the actual learning of how to use the platform is under half an hour.
Another question. Thank you very much for that. That's quite insightful. Does it require specialist knowledge of economics, the essay section of economics, compared to the mathematical section of economics? That if a student's work requires some bits of writing that is descriptive of the numerics.
Right.
So how does it interface with economics, since you're already using it at the business school, the George Business School? How was your experience in using it to give feedback or mark economic questions?
So that's a good question. Now, we still feel there is use for human human assessors, especially when it comes to the essay subjects or when you're evaluating pieces of writing of students. And we focus on the quantitative parts. Usually these are separate. So, for example, you're learning the maths and stats skills, or you're learning finance techniques, or things like that, or how to solve an economic model, and those parts are quantitative. Sometimes you do have parts of questions that you have to explain something, and sometimes that involves writing, and you can write something that an instructor can then look at on our system. Sometimes we can actually put that on the platform in a more interesting way. Let me see if I can find an example.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're talking about economics, I have an economics question here where this was also done with our work with Frank Howell at London School of Economics, who has one of the big textbooks in this area. If I share this screen. So, for example, you're asked to produce an argument, or if there are decreasing returns to scale, then average cost must be, well, decreasing or increasing or constant. So here you've actually got an interesting question where you need to put some things in order and then finally select an item for the conclusion. So there are various bits working here. There are multiple choice bits, but there are also, how do we put an argument in order that you need to think about? So you can actually do this question, and some of the same skills and thought processes are involved as if you were writing. So some questions that are written, we can translate into our system, and you can write an argument down by putting the right argument in order with the right choices in the middle. So here it would be, let's say, this might be the first step. So let's bring that to the top. This is the first step, and then let's find the second step. And maybe this is the second step. I don't have time to read them all at the moment, but maybe this is the second step, right third step, etc. So there are ways you can bring verbal questions into a reliably marked formal type of question that's computer accessible. And sometimes that works very well, as in this case. Sometimes you do need human markers, so we need to separate that out for humans to mark.
Wow, thank you. I wanted, it says, what is that can be implemented in somatic? What is the lowest academic level? Key stage 2, key stage 3, key stage 5, or undergraduate, or all of the above? Someone else.
We have projects in many areas, and it goes from very advanced stuff, the graduate level, down to now we're covering some primary level content with our work with Formula One in schools. So it covers a very big range, a big range of ages, but really a big range also of skills. But we can work with anything as long as there are quantitative aspects. And, even from primary school, there are quantitative things. There's understanding arithmetic operations, how they relate to the physical world, their units of measure, etc. So we can go down to that level. We do a lot of our work with primary and we do most of our work though at the moment with secondary and university level.
Okay. Thank you. Is multilingual Española? Is it available in English delivery system only? I think they mean English-based schools rather than Spanish-based schools.
Right.
Is there a linguistic barrier, essentially? I think that's
okay.
what I mean.
Give me...
Or have schools outside the Commonwealth an English-speaking system used it, like in Latin America, schools like, for instance, Spanish-speaking schools, where the curriculum is delivered in Spanish?
Yes. We don't count. We currently are supporting English, but we do have translation available. Now, I can't show that at this moment. But I can show some we're giving samples to people in Spanish. But it's not yet deployed, and so if you're interested in doing that on a project, then we're happy to discuss that, and we can tell you when the Spanish language is ready. But we do have a system that can be translated into other languages, and we can give samples in other languages.
And somebody from Ecuador in Latin America is saying that the school system will have to deploy it sometime in the future. Aggressively exploring ways of delivering education on a larger scale right now.
That's good.
So Ecuador is Spanish speaking, and is keen on having some form of partnership or deployment of the tool for teachers.
That's interesting. Yeah, if you know who is the best person to discuss,
and then
then
the other question, I hope you still have time, is the cost. What is the average cost to a class of between 20 and 25 students across a school that has 4 different arms? So about 100 students in 1 year. Roughly, it doesn't have to be mathematically exact.
100 students in 1 year. It's looking at it could be about £1,000 cost for the year, but it depends. It can depend on the level. If it's school level, it can be more affordable than that. If it's more specialist courses, it can cost more, but that would be the baseline. But we're always happy to discuss pricing to meet needs.
Thank you. And if there's any way we can contact you, or any individuals want to contact you, or what would be the contact point?
You can write to me at and that will come through to me. Will also come through to Daniel, my co-founder, and so we'd be happy to set up a call. You could even go through to, one moment. If you go to this link, you can also set up a meeting, and one of us will come and have a chat with you, and it'd be great to meet up. So something a bit more personal. Either of those methods. I put it in the chat. So those my email, and also how to set up a meeting automatically. Chris, you maybe you're muted on here.
Yeah, I think that clarifies the issue of boring or boredom when it have to mark. I think I'm still getting an echo. Peter. So where you have to mark 100 scripts for the half term, and you have to carry a whole box home to mark. So this is a welcome relief for people that want to teach and give feedback. And the instancy of the feedback is another thing that can encourage students. So are there resources that are available, free or paid for, on somatic teaching and delivery?
The resources are all free to view for teachers. Just get in touch and I'll give you an account to be able to look at the resources. And they're generally available for standard syllabi like A-levels, International Baccalaureate, GCSE, that stuff. And for some university courses, they're very standard, but we're always happy to discuss additional projects depending on what you're teaching. So just tell us what you're teaching and we'll we'll tell you whether we got the resources available or, discuss how to get them available for your course.
Sydney Success College, Cambridge. And
I will contact you because I will be going to Cambridge.
okay, there's somebody, an ex Trinity graduate, an ex Trinity student.
I'm also an
that
ex-Trinity
works in the
student.
Horn of Africa, Eritrea, that
Right.
is keen to exchange views with
Great.
you on this issue. Thank you very much for your contribution. So if
My
we
pleasure.
don't have any other questions, where's Stefan? Stefan is probably gone with the other phone. If we don't have any questions, Stefan normally has questions about AI and the deploy. Okay, it was going to ask about how much AI is deployed on this and how much AI will be in the next version so that life can be made easier for everyone. Because I know that teachers are afraid of generative AI because they think the students will abuse it, cut and paste. But you are, in a way, using technology to reassure us.
Our systems are designed to be completely reliable, so they're actually algorithmic. However, we are adding AI elements in order to give students a bit of help. Not a bit of help to immediately do the problems, but if they get stuck, they can then get some help to unblock themselves. So they get the help at a time when they need the help, not right away, so that they don't do the work to do the problem. So we time it so that the help they get is at the right educational point. And we're going to use AI to help with this. We're not using AI to mark student work, which would end up being not completely reliable.
Time scale to implementation. Stefan is just asking, time scale to implementation. So how quickly have you deployed it and how long have you deployed it? Or just give an average.
I would say we can be very fast. We deployed our Judge Business School prep course in a couple of weeks between they said do it and then we actually gave it to students. So we can be very fast. Some things take longer. So we're doing our engineering course for Formula One. That obviously takes months because it's a very, very unique course that we're developing from scratch. So it really depends on the type of project. If you're asking for, can I do this school level syllabus that's standard? We could have it there within a week. If you're doing a more complex, difficult project, that could take months. It's hard to say without knowing what the project is. Happy to discuss any projects from small to large.
Thank you very much for your time. And those of you on Instagram, if you have any more questions, all you need to do is write #Somatic and then the question, #Somatic and the question. If you're on Facebook, same thing, #Somatic and then the question, and I'll make sure that it gets sent to Professor Charles, and you'll get response from the team at Somatic because they are quite active and committed, dedicated to how education can be improved one way or the other. So
For schools in Africa, has he had any experience? Because I'm engaged with the school in Eritrea, for example.
okay. Does Somatic have any current African experience in secondary or college? In primary, that's elementary or secondary, right?
Yeah.
In electric or secondary schools in a place like Eritrea. Eritrea is non-Commonwealth.
No.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, but English speaking.
Yeah.
Dual English and Arabic. Okay. Dual English and Arabic delivery.
Okay. We have some experience in Nigeria of not at the deployment phase, but more specification of content to match syllabi. Now, Nigeria is not very is relatively close to international, especially UK syllabi. So I don't know the corresponding situation for Eritrea. Arabic is not the easiest language to deploy, so I would need to evaluate how hard that would be to deploy. But certainly deploying in English to a school level syllabus, it should be fairly straightforward. But I would need to look at the syllabus, in Eritrea for the levels you're talking about. But I'm happy to take a look at the Eritrean mathematics curriculum and see how well we match. That would be an interesting for us.
What do you think? What's your take on the forthcoming EU AI Act? We have about 100 days to until forthcoming EU AI Act.
That's I think it's not very education related. It's to do with personal data more than mathematical data or academic data. So that means that fortunately, we are not very tied to what goes on with the EU AI Act. So it doesn't really affect us very much. It doesn't affect education very much, in my opinion. I think it's very risk averse. So it's all about the dangers of AI. What do I think about it? So I've got my personal hat on, not semantic. This is not. I don't think it's relevant to education. But what I think it is very risk averse, and the EU approach to AI, EU is generally very risk averse, and which can limit innovation in Europe. And it is a recognized problem among European countries that they're focused on regulation rather than focused on how we can create opportunities, which is a very European mentality. They are. Some of the ways they're regulating does have some dangers. They are trying to regulate bias. And here, I would say all these academics that study bias in AI, they're not talking about statistical bias. They're saying something is biased if it doesn't correspond to what I think or what elites think or what my people like me think. And so I think there's a very dangerous definition of bias that's used to regulate AI. With many AIs being criticized for saying things that actually have some statistical justification. So they're often criticizing things where there is a statistical basis as biased when it's actually more accurate than what the AI researchers think. So I think these regulators have to themselves be regulated. And there's a danger that they get carried away and just try to regulate everything into the way that they see the world.
Widely used in Europe, in UK.
I didn't quite hear everything because of the echo. Chris, is it easy? Did you hear that?
Question.
No, it's not here. Now it's here. Okay. Yes. Yes. Now.
About the GDP, what's your take again as a sub-question on the GDPR European-wide regulations, which are also used, I would say, globally, with some additional, including in America, on a slightly different name.
The regulation is stricter than in the US, but I think it's reasonable to be sensitive about data, especially student data. So we do various bits of work to be GDPR compliant, and I'd say most of that work seems quite reasonable to require of companies. So that's a sort of regulation I think is quite reasonable. It prevents people's data from being used in ways that are annoying to advertise to them or to be used in other purposes. And I know a lot of AI companies want to use personal data as training data, and we're not in that position. So I think it makes sense for people to have some control of their data, and the GDPR does help with that. So personally, I'm quite positive about it, and we do the work to be GDPR compliant, and it is quite international. We work in Singapore. We did various work to get set up. National University of Singapore. It's quite similar regulation there. Also fairly strict about the use of data. So we have to work with it, and I think there are reasons for it. Anything else, Chris?
Is it this non-education, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we're not one last non-education, because we're going to come to the future of the textbook. You should.
Okay, yes.
You show the future of the textbook. That means every single content that we have now can be reversed back to electronics, which is essentially not only
Yes.
paperless, but interactive. How
That's
do you
right.
see this as being deployed in, and what is the rate of deployment? What is the rate of deployment that you think?
We see the most value of this for courses where students need to learn fairly quickly. So we see the great, but textbooks are going to change, and the people who have the textbook market are textbook companies, and they're going to change, and that's going to adapt slowly because textbook companies are slow. So that's this long-term thing. But right now there are big needs where in certain courses, students are required to make extremely rapid progress from knowing almost nothing about, say, statistics to be able to do very advanced stuff in a few weeks. So those are the courses that we work quite a lot with, and they've got this almost impossible task. And having interactive learning materials that can allow them to take in ideas quickly is very important. So that's where we get a lot of success out of our interactive textbooks. And so that's where we're seeing the first deployments of these things.
The Americans woke up to your presentation. IP rights with the contents being transferred from the old traditional system
Yes.
to electronic system.
Yes.
What do you think about the rights and the IP,
AI.
IP implications?
AI is, well, first of all, people do give us content because they want their content to be upgraded. And when they do that, we have an agreement with them. So generally, it means that anything that's unique about what their work is their own IP, unless they give it to us. So it's just it's a normal part of our contract when we work with people. And generally, if you give us your materials, you want us to upload them, it's your decision whether those are available for us to use generally or not. The default is it's not available. So that's just a matter of doing business in a fair and ordered way. Now, we do know that AI systems are scraping the world for data and using that data, and that it's considered a potential IP violation when they're just using all the work that people have done that's online. We don't do any scraping, so it's not something that we are involved with. It's probably something that's going to be more regulated in the future, maybe less tolerated in the future, but it's a bit of a wild west of AI at the moment.
Yes. Considering that
You have to see that thing. Look at
content that you've been provided
No,
Change in a way.
no, he will give it after this. Just a hint. Okay.
Rearrange. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No more questions. Thank you.
Charles,
Okay,
thank you very
thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you. I've been listening. It's very, very helpful, and I've learned a lot today from you. Thank you very much. Just wanted
Thank
to thank you for your time
Okay.
today.
Thanks very
Okay,
much. Hope
thank
to
you.
meet some of
Let's
you
put our hands
at a
together.
later point.
Okay. So we're going to have a quick coffee break. And then when we come back, the Americans, I know they've all woken up now.
Yeah.
The Americans will then take us and they will be back to New Jersey with Isaac, a former NASA engineer. Thank you very much. And don't forget, mark the 27th of January, 2025 as a date. 27th of January, 2025. Mark it in your diaries now because something exciting is going to happen.